Hello there, and thanks for joining us again on Dr. Teach Me to Parent. We have a great program today. We have a very special guest. Dr. Tom Jones is going to join us by Skype, and he is a learning facilitator. And we're going to ask him what that really means. He's an author of a book. You have it on the screen there on Doers. And today we're going to look at the idea of who is a doer in business, who's a doer in the school system, who's a doer in the home, and who is a doer in a marriage. So the idea of a doer is a very important concept and a very important understanding that we need to have so we understand how we can be most effective as parents with our children, because we want to teach our children to be doers. That's really the purpose of our program today. How do you teach a child to be a doer so that as he enters into the marketplace of life and as he enters into the academic world of life and into marriage in the future, he will be a doer, a productive individual in all phases and all realms of life for him. But putting it in perspective today as we look at the idea of doer, here's a little quote that will just put in perspective for us. The hen is the one who can lay around and still be a productive doer. Now there you are. The hen is the only one that can just lay around and still be a productive doer. And most of the time, laying around does not lead to productivity at all. And but a doer is a productive person, and we want to kind of get that concept today as we talk about it with Tom Jones. Tom, welcome, and I'm glad that you're joining us today by Skype. You're out of town, so we will carry on this little conversation through our Skyping system. And there you are, and welcome to our program today as our very special guest. Tom, you indicate yourself as a learning facilitator. Tell me, what is that?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, it means that I don't have I'm not the sole source of knowledge in the room, whether I'm in a consulting role or a teacher role in the classroom. That everybody in the room with me has knowledge and brings things, and we need to learn from each other. If you look at the typical strategy for teaching, classroom teaching, teaching training in organizations, or teaching in the home, in the Western culture, we teach in what's called a negatively directed manner. We teach our children what not to do.
Yes, we really focus on that, over-focus on that.
Yeah, and it's conformity and compliance. So the goal as a loving parent or as a supervisor, caring supervisor, is to make sure that your children or the person you're supervising doesn't do anything wrong. So that's our whole system. Now, doers look at that and say, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
That's right.
What about that guy over there? You know, what about Bill Gates? What about so-and-so? And what about so-and-so? And what about Richard Branson? And what about all these other people that have done marvelous things?
Yes.
What about them? They didn't do it the way they were taught.
Because they were raised differently, I'm sure.
Well, that's an area I'm not really sure of, but it's probably the case.
Sure.
There's a lot of conditions in a child's life.
Yeah. You're not born as a doer. You learn the doer behavior patterns. You learn to become the doer personality. You learn to become a doer individual. And that takes time, and it's part of the developmental process. But I'm glad you said what you did, though, is that the average home, the typical home, over-focuses on making a kid compliant, obedient, silent, quiet.
For what reason? For what reason? To avoid being wrong.
And conflict. We don't like conflict.
We don't like conflict. My theme as a learning facilitator is to introduce the notion that all of us in the room, whether there's me and my two sons, or one of my sons and me, or my wife and I, whatever, is we together want three things. First, we want to be loved, and second, we want to belong, and third, we want to be right. And that's need to be loved and to belong and to be right is the strongest motivator there is.
Yes, it is. Those are three very powerful points. When you talk to kids, boy, I tell you, the emphasis is on belonging, being part of, being integrated into. That's a very important concept for kids.
And there are three, sometimes four maturation points in a child's life where that test comes to play. One is at the 4th grade, another is at the 7th grade, typically the first year of college.
Yeah. And
then a fourth one would be the first time you make the transition from learning to earning. That's a tough transition. Yeah. You go from 18 years or 20, 25 years of learning, and then you go to work earning. It's a completely different environment.
It's a whole different way of living life and thinking about life, isn't it?
Right.
Say, Tom, you wrote this book entitled Doers.
Yeah.
So let's take a little bit of time here just for a moment and define a doer. What are you talking about in terms of a doer? Now, you talk about it in terms of a corporation, a business, maybe a school system, and a home as well. Help me understand what a doer is as you define it in your book.
Well, I think it's a natural definition that people don't use until they start thinking about it.
Sure.
Let's just begin with the Bible. There are over 100 references to doers in the Bible. The one that's most known or often quoted is James 1:22, that said, "Be a doer of the word and not a hearer only." So doers, literally, when you say do this, do that, or this is how this is done, and this is what I need you to do, which is the language of teaching and parenting, they take that literally for some reason.
Sure.
My mother told me to do this, and then you go and do it, and you come back and she said, "Well, I didn't mean for you to do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
I meant tomorrow." "Well, you didn't say tomorrow." "And I wanted you to take your little sister with you." "Well, you didn't say take my little sister."
Sure.
Because if I take my little sister, then I'm not going to be able to do this the way I want to do it. So it becomes very, very personalized. And doers, secondarily, take initiative. They don't wait to be told what to do. See how the word do and doers it's a natural part of our vocabulary every day.
Yes.
And doers pick up on that vocabulary and take it personally. So if you tell somebody to take action, they're going to take the action.
Yeah.
I get in trouble with my wife, and we've been married 53 years, and I love her more dearly every day. And I'm thankful every morning when I wake up and she's still there. And I think, my God, this is going to be a fun day. But I get in trouble with her because I don't do things on her time frame. And she's English, so English tend not to give you direct orders or instructions. Like, "Honey, the trash smells." So what? I can deal with the trash.
Yeah, it's a hint. Yeah.
I don't empty the trash because it's not full.
Sure.
Well, I wait to empty the trash until it's full. And I learned in a counseling session not too long ago that the reason you empty the trash is because it smells, not because it's full. See the difference?
The whole different way of thinking about a task.
Exactly. So doers think about things differently. Not better, not worse, just differently.
Would you say doers are more creative?
Well, they tend to take situations that have a predictability to them and create alternatives just to see what happens.
So they think about it a little differently, not necessarily creatively.
Not necessarily, but they follow a natural innovation path, which is create, advance, refine, execute.
Sure.
The system tells us, create an idea, advance the idea, bring somebody in to examine the idea, do the what-if game, and then you refine it, make sure it's within the budget, make sure it's within the purview of the family. Children don't go off on vacation on their own, typically. And then you execute. Doers create and execute to see what happens.
But they consider a lot of different factors in carrying out a particular task.
Not necessarily unless they're working with somebody else.
All right.
The doers tend not to think things through fully, and that's where they get a lot of criticism.
So if I'm a doer, then I have learned to respond to the command, please do. Please do this. Please do that. I've learned that that's an important word in my vocabulary to which I respond.
Yeah.
There are kids, there are families that use the word please do, and it doesn't mean anything at all.
No, not at all.
Everybody just sits and continues to do what they're doing, what the activity they're engaged in, but don't get up and do what was requested. So I gather the doer is really the person who takes the word do, please do, as a command or as a trigger to respond, to do it, to act on it.
Yeah, without waiting to be told how.
Or not waiting to be told do it again or do it again and do it again.
Yeah, and we ran into, although I'm not a counselor or a marriage counselor, but in my work in organizations, people come to trust me and ask me about personal kinds of things like their children or their families.
Sure.
And often with children, the parent will say to me, the school called today and so did such and such. And, what do I do? I said, well, let's sit down with so-and-so and find out why they did that. Now, I'll share two stories with you I'll make them brief, but they weren't brief. In the fourth grade, there's a transition in the fourth grade. From third grade to fourth grade, you are now on your own. Instead of in the third grade, they tell you, here's the 25 words for spelling.
Sure.
We'll have a pre-test on Wednesday. If you get it right, you don't have to mess with Friday. And then those of you that miss the words will get a chance to do it again on Thursday. And if you miss those words, then your real test is not till Friday. Fourth grade, they post the spelling words on a bulletin board and say nothing, and then test you on Friday. So the system changes drastically.
So you become a doer at grade 4. I mean, according to that particular story, because you have to take responsibility to find out what is to be learned and be prepared to do it.
Exactly. And often a doer will look at the words and spell the words and expect to get credit on Monday. Say, no. We have to wait till Friday.
Yeah.
So they kind of violate systems norms. So here's a story. This young fella, he's 10 years old in the fourth grade, is having trouble at school. And I happen to be working with his parents in the company. And anyway, the conversation went to this young fella. And he was rambunctious and wouldn't sit still and left his seat a lot, wandered around. But he turned his work in early and ahead of time. So they thought there was something, quote, wrong with him. They're going to send him to the school psychiatrist. So I just sat with him one day, and in this process, they hired a special education teacher to sit with him and work with him.
Sure.
So for the first time, this is why I mentioned spelling, for the first time in this young fellow's life, he comes home with the 25 words, 17 of 25 are spelled wrong. And it's never happened before. So the mother, the students, everybody's up in arms. So sat him down, and I won't give out his name in case his parents are listening. So I sat him down. I said, what happened? He said, well, you know what? They went to all the trouble to give me this special teacher. I really, really liked her, so I thought I'd give her something to do.
Turns the tables.
So he misspelled the words intentionally in order to give her something to do because he liked her.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a 10-year-old. Where's that child going to go the rest of their life with that kind of thinking?
Yeah. Oh, you can see it from a point of view of being creative. You can see it from a point of view of being obnoxious and defiant.
Well, that's the other end of it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And not only that, but he can't spell.
Yeah. I probably still can't spell. But you raise an interesting point on that in terms of, doer is a kind of a acquired idea, isn't it? You have to learn to act properly to carry out a task to its completion, but you have to initiate that. And then you take certain steps to bring it to so that's really what a doer is. Somebody that initiates something and sees it to completion.
In their own way, in their own style. They do it their way. There's that famous Frank Sinatra song that irritates. I find out people are irritated by that song. I did it my way.
Sure.
Yeah, the people I know that are irritated by that song. They don't like the idea of somebody doing it their
well,
way.
I mean, we always like our kids to do it our way. That's what we are as parents. We wanted everybody to do it our way because we always think our way is the best, right?
Well, we think our way is the best, and our way is going to keep us from the shame of a child who is not conforming.
But I gather in your book, you're really kind of laying out the idea that a doer is a person who has his own way of doing things, but he gets them done. It isn't just a matter of starting it and then quitting, but he really gets it done and gets it done to a level of satisfaction or reasonableness.
They do things the right way for the right reasons. But the right reason is in their mind. So the strategy in working with the doer, both in the home and in the classroom and at work, is to help them understand the consequences of doing it their way.
Yeah.
And the benefits of doing it the way the system has aligned it. And then what happens is that the doer's doing it his way or her way changes the system.
Which means change not only the school system or the corporation, but changes the way the family works, the way the family functions. Because if you have a family and you have a doer in that family, you're going to have a different family than if you have a non-doer in the family, or you are raising 2 or 3 or 4 non-doers, kids who just sit and who do not act. I mean, that's a different family than a family that has a kid or 2 or 3 that when something is to be done, they get up and do it. When they start something, they finish it. When they have it done, they celebrate it, and so on. But Tom, we're going to take a break. You've introduced an interesting idea here about what the doer in the family. And parents, we often want and think in terms of being the one that teaches doing behavior, being the doer, the chief doer of the family. So when we get back, I want to ask you the question, how do you become a doer? How does a parent teach their children to become doers in the home so that they will become doers in the school, that they become doers in their company or in their work world, and they'll be doers in their own marriage later on in life? How do we teach a kid to become a doer? We're going to do that when we come back.
Okay.
Good. Okay. Join us here in a minute.
The Green Gables Care Home is a 24-hour assisted living facility for the elderly located in Clovis, California, offering spacious private and semi-private rooms which are wheelchair approved, catering to the special person in your life who needs attention and wants to live in a loving home environment. The Green Gables Care Home has assisted living in secured homes for elderly with Alzheimer's, memory loss, and for your loved ones needing assistance with their activities of daily living. Call 559-297-9438 and visit greengablescarehome.com.
Sometimes good intentions hurt rather than help. For just $1.76 per meal, the Fresno Rescue Mission offers more than food. We offer hope. Please donate today.
Do you need a locksmith? Layman's Lock and Safe Service and Repair is available for you. 559-228-1805.
Gained a lot, learned a lot, and got a lot of love. If it weren't for the knowledge that I had gained from the classes at PCC, I probably wouldn't be the mom I am today. See, there it goes.
I would love you to meet my son, Aaron. My situation was very difficult. I didn't know how my life was going to turn out.
We graduated in June 2010, and we got married in July. And through family, the Pregnancy Care Center changed our lives.
The Pregnancy Care Center was a huge, vital part in helping me walk through that pregnancy, in educating me and loving on me during that time.
Choosing a Medicare plan can be difficult and frustrating. Susan Hatch can guide you through the Medicare maze and help find the right plan for you. Susan helps people understand the confusing and drastic changes that occur every year in Medicare. Susan will only recommend plans that will protect your assets and allow you to continue to see your personal doctor. As a 100% independent agent, Susan is not controlled by any particular insurance company to steer a person onto any one particular plan. Susan was awarded the #1 Medicare supplement agent in California. Look for Susan's Medicare question and answers every Monday in the Fresno Bee. Call Susan at 559-307-2287 and visit MedicareToday.net.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Okay, welcome back, and I'm glad that you're rejoining us now as we pick up the next segment here of our conversation with Tom Jones, the author of the book Doers. And we're kind of picking Tom's brain here a little bit as he wrote this book for business. Wrote it for businessmen, wrote it for corporations, and he's applied it to educational systems. We're looking at this book from the point of view of how does it apply to parents? How do parents become to be much more effective in raising their children to be effective children, which means that they become a doer and not just a laggard, if you will. But Tom, let me ask you this question as we pick up this second. How do you teach a kid to become a doer? How do you teach a kid to get off the sofa, get off of his phone, get off of his videos, and think as a doer and act as a doer and become a doer?
That's a difficult challenge because...
Yeah, it's a big challenge.
Well, those are different issues. The person that you're describing, being on the phone or being engaged in gaming, they are doers. They are doing things not in alignment with the parent's expectation.
That's an interesting point there, because we don't necessarily see them as doers. We see them as wasting their time.
Exactly. They're using their time to do things differently than we do. And, people are, I'll get on my soapbox here for a second. People tend to bash millennials. And I'm a little tired of it, so I'm trying to defend them, not that they need it. Millennials don't feel they need experience in order to do a job well. They know how to do it because they have the information that tells them how if they need to. They just may have never done it before.
That's right.
So if you're hiring somebody based on experience, then a doer is not going to be the best person for you. But if you want somebody that's curious enough to discover how to get it done and to do it the right way for the right reasons, then you want to hire a doer. So there's a story that Neil deGrasse Tyson tells on a couple of TED Talks about a guy hiring, and they had two candidates. One candidate came in, and the guy doing the hiring said to the candidate, "How tall is the spire on this building?" And the guy said, "Well, I'm an architect. I know exactly how tall it is. It's 155 feet." And then the second candidate came in, and he said, "Well, how tall is the spire on this building?" And the candidate says, "I don't know, but I'll be right back." Went outside, measured the height of his shadow, compared it to the height of the building, came back in and said, "I'm estimating approximately 150 feet. Now, who would you hire? The guy that knew the answer? Here's the key to that story. Would you hire the guy that already knew the answer, or would you hire the guy that knew how to get the answer?
I would take the second one.
There you go. And that's what doers are. They don't necessarily have had to have done it before. So if somebody's, putting their life in gaming, they're learning critical thinking. They're learning mental agility. They're learning things that at some point, when the money runs out, I have three 30-year-olds that I'm in touch with, former students right now. One of them is going around the world as a digital nomad. He's become an expert in Bitcoin and blockchain cryptology. He's making a ton of money advising people in countries all over the world. But he did it just by wandering around and observing and listening at various conferences. He's now become a resident expert on it. I got another guy that went into engineering because his dad was. He's still home in the back bedroom at age 33, trying to figure out what to do with his life. And then the third one is just graduating from Texas A&M with a degree in black nationalism, and he's about to get a very, very fine job at a university. All three of them, and I've known them for a very, very long time, all came up in a non-conforming environment. And I know their parents all through this pathway, for all three of them, were really worried about them. You know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, now they're out doing, and they're doing well. So
you raise an interesting point, and it struck me is that when you look at life from the point of view of a question, I don't know the answer, but I'll go find it out. I'll go learn the answer. That's an entirely different way of raising a child than raising a child by teaching the facts, to learn the facts of something. Right. It's almost like there's one answer and there's only one answer, and you have to learn what that is.
And the right answer is at the head of the classroom.
There you are.
Or at the head of the dining table, you know.
There you are. It's my way, or the way that I like it.
My dad would decide where we went in the summer.
That's right.
And my choice would have been to stay home, play baseball with my friend.
Yeah.
And we went to Florida, we went to California, we went all kinds of places that he wanted to go. I didn't really find that very valuable at all.
But to raise a doer is to open the question: what would be a good way to spend our summer? You know, how would we best benefit from what we do during the summer, and open it up for discussion? You know, and a lot of parents don't do that. You're absolutely right. It's kind of the parent that makes the decision, and the kid goes along with it, as compared to turning that thing around and saying, what do we all want to do? Let's all put it into the hat. Let's all put it into the pot and stir it up, and then come out and see what we come up with, and see what is the best way to spend the summer, so we all benefit.
And when children break things, it isn't necessarily intentional. It's part of an experiment. Now, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter and a 6-year-old granddaughter, and they do some of the strangest things if you watch them. You know, drop an egg and see what happens. So you could get all excited about you just broke this egg, and
you get very upset about that, basically.
Well, look at the pattern that the yolk makes, Grandpa. Mm-hmm. So wait a minute, we're going to run out of eggs before this is over. So let me go back to a point you made earlier in the first segment. The term non-doer is probably a term that doesn't work. Doers come in degrees and behavioral patterns. So what the book talks about, and if you go on my website, there's a behavioral profile that you can take that will identify which of your natural behaviors align with those of a doer. For example, one question is, in judgment, it measures your ability to judge.
Yes.
And you answer this on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being, yeah, I'm like that, 1 being, no, I'm not. So are you likely to suggest an alternative strategy when you believe your way is better? So a doer sitting in the classroom, listening to somebody teach how something works, if that person has a better idea, what do they do with it? You put your hand in the air like I used to, and you get sent out of the room.
Yeah, we like conformity. You know, we like uniformity.
So,
and, you know, the doer is obviously the one that stretches the limits and opens up new vistas and ways of thinking about things as well as accomplishing things.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what you have to look at. A non-doer, to me, is almost like the person who sits and is inactive.
Well,
but maybe that's not the case.
Let me try another thing. Go back to the what's called the Pareto Principle, which nobody knows, but it's better known as the 80-20 principle.
Oh, yes.
Everybody knows that.
Sure.
80% of what you produce is a result of 20% of your activity.
That's right.
In the workplace, what makes doers so vital is that roughly 20% of your workforce are going to be doers, and they're doing 80% of your work.
Yeah.
So the people you're calling non-doers are the 80%.
Yeah.
You can, in the classroom, if you can link the doers with their new ideas to the people the 80%, you can have internal peer leadership in your classroom.
You know, it seemed to me that a teacher in that example would be very wise to identify the kids in the classroom that are the doers.
Right.
And then glorify them. You know, really speak well of them and put them forward and celebrate them and let them be an example. Let them be a model, you know, to other kids. And I think the same thing in the family. If you have a kid in your family that is a doer, you know, maybe the other kids in the family would almost feel rejected or feel they're unimportant. But it's the idea of taking a doer and using that doer as a teacher of others so that we all become doers. All kids in the family should become a doer. That's what you would hope for.
All of us have a degree of doerness, if you want to call it that. And when you take this profile,
that's a good word, yeah.
You I have people take this that, you know, the maximum score would be 120.
Yeah.
I have people that score 30, 35. They say, well, I'm not a doer. Well, that's not the case. There are certain areas where you are a doer, certain doer behaviors.
Yeah.
If you pull together a team and you built your team, which is what I do as a consultant coming into a company, I assess who's got what doer tendencies and line them up so that all teams have at least one or two people with all of the doer tendencies covered.
Yeah.
And that basically is what change is all about.
Tom, let me ask you this question. Give me an example of somebody that is really a doer, that you admire, that you appreciate, that you've come to know, that would be a very influential person because he's a doer and might be an example for us to emulate. Do you have somebody in mind?
A lot of doers are very quiet and silent and right. In fact, Thomas Keating. You ever heard of Thomas Keating?
I have.
All right. Thomas Keating was an exemplary doer. But Thomas Keating created contemplative lifestyle and centering prayer. Very quietly, as a monk who didn't speak for 20-some years. He thought and prayed and meditated about why are we doing it this way, and created a whole new way of doing things and communicating with God through contemplative lifestyle and centering prayer. He never spoke about it. They had to sit him down and interview him and pull it out of him. And I've got a copy of his book here that I just bought. It's a book on contemplative living written by somebody else. But they had his permission to put his ideas in a book. So doers are not loud and obnoxious and out in front all the time.
We always think about that, don't we? We always think of a person who's kind of running around and getting things done and accomplishing things and making fusses and making changes and upsetting people. We think of doers like that.
There are people who have those qualities and characteristics. So in the family context, to put it in three different contexts.
Yeah, give me that in the family. Yeah, right.
If you've got that type of person in your family, you know, sit them down and help them understand the consequences of that behavior. Because at you know, I don't know what point maturation is anymore. Adolescence supposedly now goes up into the middle 20s and early 30s.
25. The brain develops until it's 25.
Yeah.
So we use that as your marker.
It's somewhere between ability to talk to your parents and 25 years old, and you're still in the back bedroom. You need a conversation. You know, you could read the book. There's a lot out there besides what's in the book. Help people think through why they do things a certain way. And for instance, the things that is noted in our family, we never eat at the same time. We don't have a fixed dinner.
Yeah.
It's the routine that we go through. You know, what time you want to eat? I don't care. What time do you want to eat? How about 6? How about 6:30? How about 7? And maybe 7:45 we're sitting down because we all decided to do something at 7:45. So our whole family has just been not on a fixed timeline.
So a family, really, a doer family is one that has a lot of flexibility.
A lot of flexibility, and that needs to be okay.
Yes.
So you know, the other that's in the family. In the schoolroom, teachers could learn very, very early. Hopefully, they learn certainly by the 4th grade how to spot a doer and how to use that doer to his or her influence in the classroom.
That's a big question right there.
That's huge. You could lighten your class load if you get doers as peer leaders and peer coaches. Look what Jimmy just did.
Yeah, but you don't want to give the idea that the doer is a teacher pet.
No, heavens no.
Because then the kids reject him.
No, they don't take kindly to that role at all.
No.
Back to the doer behavior in the workplace, you don't want everybody being a doer because they're going to go off and do things their own way.
Sure.
So you want to find people that particularly in a dysfunctional environment, which we could talk about another time.
We'll talk about later, yeah.
In a dysfunctional environment, dysfunction simply means that the people who are working there lack the confidence to work together. And they prefer to work on their own, and you get less done that way.
Yeah. In other words, a doer really is a person who connects with other people, collaborates, and integrates his behavior with other people. It's a joint effort. I gather doers are really people.
Well, they are people if they like the people. If you don't, there's certain people I don't like, and I know Jesus tells me I'm supposed to love them, but he can love them. I'm still working on it. I have a hard time working with people I don't like. Always have. I don't like teamwork. I don't value working with others. Rarely have. I've been independent most of my life. Made a lot of mistakes, but I don't care. So if you're going to work with me, it's a challenge. I'll tell you right up front. It's a real challenge. I had many teachers in high school who would stand me up in front of the class and use me as an example of what not to do. I remember Mrs. Breeden once told me, because I kept asking her about algebra. What am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
She stood me up in front of the class one day and she said, I want you to know you're never going to amount to anything unless you understand algebra. Huh. So when I was applying for my doctoral work at University of San Francisco, you're supposed to write this big, why I want to do this. I just simply wrote, to prove Mrs. Breeden wrong.
You held a grudge all those years.
So when somebody does something that we consider to be abnormal, that could be a sign that you got a doer on your hands.
So a doer really is one who is aware of a challenge, that's out there, that will take a challenge, will welcome a challenge. A little bit competitive almost, in the sense of being willing to do something that is different, that is outside the ordinary and something that maybe others would not appreciate.
That's true. That's the good side. The downside, as I've learned many times, is people have said to me, one of the key triggers that used to be for me is, nobody's ever done that before, Tom. And I say, oh, yeah, watch this. And I do it. And I find out why nobody had ever done that before. But rather than listen to people and the wisdom of others, which I certainly do now with the support system, I just thought it could be done because somebody had not really thought about the consequences.
Yeah. Say, Tom, we're going to take another break, and I want to come back and ask you the question about family life. Do you think there is such a thing as an entire family being a doer family? Is it possible for mom and dad and 2 or 3, 4 kids to all grow up and all become doers in their own sphere of influence? So think about that, and we'll come on back in a couple of minutes with the next segment. But go get a cup of coffee and join us here again in just a couple of minutes. We're dealing with Dr. Tom Jones, who has written a great book entitled Doers. So come on back in a couple of minutes. See you.
When you need a dentist who has a passion for superior aesthetics and comfort, you need Dr. Christopher Wong with Cedar North Dental. Call 559-432-4948 or visit cedarnorthdental.com.
Hey! Try to close the club. Tanya, come here.
At Boys and Girls Clubs, it's not just about trying new things.
Kitchen in my hometown.
It's not about learning the right steps. 4. Or making contact.
5, 6, 7, 8.
It's not about exploring the future. It's about helping them build it. It's about taking steps to greatness. About making a connection. It's about proving every kid and teen has what it takes. It's about people in our clubs who bring out the greatness in every kid who enters our doors. It's not just about being on stage. It's about walking across it. Great futures start here, and here, and here.
Sat7 is a Christian media network that uses uncensored satellite television to broadcast across the Middle East and North Africa, and is also available globally online.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Okay, here we go back again now with Dr. Tom Jones as our guest today, who wrote the book Doers. And a great book to identify the people who really accomplish and who really make our companies, our corporations, our organizations function well. And the ones that really make school systems function well. We're looking at the idea of a doer here in a family and what families are that are effective as doer families and ones that really raise children to be effective doers themselves as they grow up and as they enter in the workplace and they get married and raise their own families. How can we promote this idea of a doer in our society, a doer in our home, a doer in our community? And Tom's written the book on it, and it's one that I would certainly recommend for you to pick up and read. It's available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And obviously you can get it on his website as well. It's on the screen there in front of you. You can pick up the book through his website, as well. So, Tom, let me bring this forward to you in terms of how families function as a doer, the real quality of a family. If we were going to say, here's a doer family, how are they different from non-doer families? How do we raise 3 or 4 kids and the whole family is a doer? The whole family takes on the business. The whole family raises the chickens. The whole family runs the farm. The whole family has projects and involvements of different tasks that they're involved. They're all accomplishers. How do we raise that? How do we bring that about in our culture?
I think it has to be intentional rather than accidental.
I would think so.
Go back to I was mentioning during the break a famous building family in San Diego, the Fletcher family. When I was down there going to school, they created Balboa Park and Hotel Cortez. Almost anything in the whole San Diego basin was developed, built by the Fletcher Construction Company. I believe, and I could be wrong on this number, they had 5 or 6 children, all of which went into their own all started their own companies and followed the same model as the grandparents, with integrity and honesty and community service.
You used to see that a lot in farms, where the entire family had responsibilities, and the farm was successful because the entire family, had their own tasks, they had their own assignments, and they did them. They were doers, all of them. I think of the Trump family and all the kids. I mean, there's all doers. I mean, that's a doer family.
It is, and there are others, the Gates family, and many that I have known. How we gotten away from that, I think, has to do with technology. When you were raised on a farm, quote, in the old days, you didn't have much of an alternative. But then automation came along, and now you could plow, 40 acres in 40 minutes instead of 40 days. So you didn't need everybody in the family and the farmers. I spent 10 years of my life from age 7 to 17 in Iowa. Got to know a lot about farmers and got to know a lot of farmers. Sure. Most of the farmers I know, the older they got, the less they liked it. The more they encouraged their children to go do something else.
Yes, I've seen that a lot in a lot of families, which I think is a sad thing. And I mean, it's a reality that maybe the farm in that particular situation does not have a future. But it's sad that when you tell your kids go do something else, don't do what I'm doing. That's a child's discretion, isn't it?
Well, it is, and there's some struggle there. I remember having first set up my business right there in Fresno, where you are, 1980. I was doing a lot of work with big farm families over on the west side and down in South Valley, and the big farming families were expecting their children to do what they did, and they were creating a legacy. Daughter would get married, the son would come into the business.
Yeah.
I remember one in particular that the daughter got frustrated because all the sons' wives would come into the business, and she got married to this guy, and they didn't bring him in. So there was this conflict, and eventually one day she bought them all out. She's walked in with a lawyer and a pile of cash and bought the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because she didn't like the way they were doing it. So family businesses, and I've done work with a lot of them.
Yeah.
Their focus isn't necessarily on making a profit. Their focus is on keeping the family together.
That's an interesting point. I think there's real value in that. I mean, the emphasis usually is in terms of how large of a profit you can make. At some point, you've made your profit. At some point, it's quality of life, and it's quality of your kids in the future, their future.
Yeah, what do they want to do?
That's profit also. Profit is not only dollars and cents. Profit is that you have raised a child that will live a life that is profitable in the future for him and for his family.
Right.
That's just as important.
We tend to label things right or wrong. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But keeping it in the context of a doer family, once you recognize the qualities and characteristics of a doer in your family, it would be great to have a family huddle and just go through that with them and say, let's go back to a time when one of our children was in, quote, trouble at school. My dad got tired of going to school because they would call him whenever I did something creative. And I won't go through those things.
Yeah, a lot of parents experience that.
And I was invited to leave high school before graduation, and the choice was reform school or the military branch of my choice. So I certainly not a conforming type person, but through all of this, I look back and my dad never got angry at me per se. He would say to me, when are you going to learn? And I'm thinking, I thought I am learning. So there was a message there, when are you going to learn? And what I learned from that later on was that I needed to have other people in my life to teach me. And that's where that learning facilitator, who else can I learn from? So
you said something there that maybe we should add that to our list of what a doer is. You just said that a doer is a learner.
Yes.
A doer is somebody who's teachable, is open for learning new facts, new information, new ways of doing things, new ways of thinking, new opportunities, taking advantage of new opportunities. I mean, isn't that an important idea about what a doer is? It's just somebody who is teachable.
That's an ideal description of a doer. Ideal. Many of them that I work with, including myself, we don't operate that way.
Well, most people don't operate that way. We think we know it.
Yeah.
We think we've already learned it. We think we already know the best way.
Right.
And that will lead to destruction so much of the time. But really what you're saying is a doer is one who is constantly open for new ideas, new ways of doing things, new creative paths, and looking just for the opportunity to try something different in a different way.
That would be the ideal situation. It isn't necessarily always that way. That doers need support systems. You'd ask me that question.
Yes.
Ahead of our, the support system concept.
Yes.
There are, and this is in the book. What doers need in their lives are challengers. People who are as strong in their convictions as they are.
Yeah.
I have at least 10 to 12 people in my support system that are challengers, and I invite them to challenge the crazy notion that I have, and they will provide me with new information that either confirms my conviction or sends me in a different direction.
In your book, you talk about some of the skills that a person needs to learn if he's going to be a doer, but you also talked about ways in which you can train a doer, raise a doer. And I looked at it from the point of view of parenting. You talk about challenger. You talk about that, a parent needs to be a challenger, needs to raise questions, raise discussion on how things are done and how things are approached. So there isn't just one way of doing it, but that there's an open door of thought and consideration.
Exactly.
But somebody who will challenge your way of doing things, challenge your way of thinking. There may be a better way.
And there's a way that you perhaps haven't thought of.
That's right.
The challenger in your life could help you with that. The other role of people who are reflectors. These are people who think like you.
Yes.
Have the same, moral attitude that you do.
Well, so it's good to have somebody in your life that will reflect with you. Will just reflect on what you're doing and where it's going and what the implications are and how effective that it really is and how it's going to change you or how it's going to change the world. That reflection is kind of creative thinking at its highest. I think it's the idea of opening the door to all other ideas that could come forward around a particular way of doing something or a particular idea. Or ideal, for that matter, how you can apply it the widest way possible. I think parents need to be reflectors, need to help children learn how to reflect on what they're doing. Think about it. Consider it.
That's very well stated, and that's very, very critical. The challenge is taking the time to build a support system, because some of us, doers in particular, don't think they need that. Doers don't mind doing things wrong.
Yeah. But, I think of the kid that breaks his path from his home and just leaves home and runs away, in different ways. They just leave home. They're leaving their support system behind. And they're going to no particular support system. They have to find a whole new support system. And that's a lot of wasted time in there, it would seem to me.
It is if that's their reason for leaving home. I don't want to get into abuse or any of that kind of stuff because that's not my area.
Well, that's a different story.
But I have I just had a conversation with a young fellow earlier this week who's currently in Mexico for a few days, and his parents are finally. He said he's 33 years old, single. He said, "I'm going home to visit my parents." He said they're finally proud of me. And because I know his history, he dropped out of college because he couldn't see much support in it. Went into investing, did very well. Developed a startup that went all the way through to about the final stage before the investors dropped it. And now he's this digital nomad I'm talking about. And his parents said to him recently, they finally understand what he was doing, that he followed his own path. But
and was succeeding in his own way.
In his own way.
But not succeeding as they anticipated it.
Not at all. So his first several adventures didn't produce great revenue, but they taught him so many things that he had done wrong and would do right the next time. So all these ventures that he's gone through now makes him a subject matter expert in an emerging field that hardly anybody understands.
Because he approaches tasks now from the point of view of, how do you best do this? How do you best approach this? There's no fixed answer.
He, as a learner.
As a learner, that's right.
He just sits in the middle of discussions and debates and conferences and learns and doesn't say anything. Very quiet, very quiet.
And then applies it at some point, I gather.
Yeah, at some point, once he's got all this stuff, he goes out and does it.
Tom, you're raising a question to me, and that is, there are helicopter parents. Parents who just hover over their children and protect them and make sure that they don't do anything outside of a boundary, and that they're well cared for and they're well protected and they're safe, and just do the right thing. And those parents do not raise doers. And then there's that set of parents that really kind of give the kid freedom of independence and opportunity to make his mistakes in life, and opportunity to leave home for a while and go to summer camp or take a trip to Europe and go places and learn life a little bit and become independent. Very different families.
They are different. I would hesitate to put any kind of value on either.
Well, they're both. They have their differences, and they have their values, and they have their lack of values, I suppose.
They're different sets of values. Helicopter parents, can raise doers because the doers discern what it is that irritates the parents or excites the parents, and learns not to do that. When I first became a computer programmer many years ago, was not my idea. It was the Navy's idea. I never understood it. I didn't like it, but I learned it well enough to keep people off my back. I got to a command, and the admiral at the command get really agitated when certain numbers in our reports, went by, or when a number was high and should be, he got excited. When the number was low and shouldn't be, he got excited. So all these guys came to me and said, "Tom, can you do something about this?" So I did something about it. I used the computer language Fortran and reset the final numbers every time to make sure they were neither above or below the margin.
That's where you are, Tom. I mean, you got to make those kind of choices and those kind of decisions, to make sure that you hone it in a way that is successful as you can live it, and as you can experience it, and as you can produce it. And not get caught in that idea that you have to do it according to somebody else's way. And that's really the critical point. But Tom, we've enjoyed our conversation today. This has been a rapid conversation on the topic of the doer, based on your book, Doers. And again, let me recommend that you in the audience pick up the book, Doer. And you get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get it on the website of Dr. Tom Jones. It's right there on the screen in front of you. That would be a great book for you to read as parents and discuss with each other as a married couple and with your entire family. So thanks for joining us today. Let me give you a kind of a quote as we bring today's program to a close. And this is your parenting tip for the day. The highest reward one can get from being a doer or a good worker is the ability to be a doer of even a better work. A doer of even better work. In other words, if you're a doer and you're successful and you achieve, the reward is getting more work, better work, a higher level of work, and you do it at a higher level of quality. And that's a reward in and of itself. So, Tom, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for leading us on this discussion of a doer. And we hope that our families can be a better doer family, right? And bye for now, and thanks for joining us.
Okay, take care.
Yep, bye for now.
introduce you to someone really special and really cool. This is my mom. My mom is an amazing person. She is a writer. She is a newly transplanted Texan. She is a woman of faith and she loves 80s music. She also is a person with a very rare genetic muscular disorder called Pompe disease.
Pompe disease is a terminal, progressive illness. It's a genetic enzyme deficiency which ultimately leads to the destruction of your skeletal muscles. Those are the muscles that control how you move, your arms, your legs, and your torso. When your jaw or esophageal muscles are affected, you can no longer eat and require a feeding tube. When your diaphragm is impacted, you can't breathe on your own any longer and require a trach ventilator. When your legs are impacted, you will no longer be able to walk without assistance. You can lose bladder and bowel control. It affects children and adults, and eventually it kills you. It is rare, but it's real.
Now, we're lucky. My mom's still able to walk, though she uses a cane to get around most of the time. She's still able to breathe unassisted, but she can't go upstairs, and she needs some kind of assistance to get up from a seated position, like if she's sitting in a chair. She has to examine every activity ahead of time to know if there are things like handicap parking, accessible buildings, and even functional bathrooms. All of her activities depend heavily on the weather. A windy day can be just as dangerous as an icy one. She jokes that you can tell what kind of day she's having by whether she can lift her arms high enough to do her hair. And she recently moved into a one-story house specifically with the idea that she's one day going to need a wheelchair to get around. Those are the kind of things she has as everyday concerns. Her normal everyday fears are things like dropping her keys or falling in public and not being able to get up. That actually happened a couple of years ago. She fell and fractured her pelvis because she was unable to break her fall.
I receive an enzyme replacement therapy every 2 weeks for life. It's a 6-hour IV. It helps slow the progression of the disease, but it is not a cure. And it costs about $100,000 every time you sit in a chair. Insurance takes care of most of that if you're lucky, but not everyone is, and the expenses add up very quickly. Things like wheelchairs, accessible vehicles, special housing, travel costs to medical conferences, doctor's appointments, and clinical trials. Luckily, there is a group that helps families with Pompe handle these costs. The United Pompe Foundation is a group connecting funds with real people who need help. This was founded by a father whose son has Pompe disease, and they could not find the resources that they needed. They assist patients and their families with medical costs and other expenses that they need to survive day to day. Every little bit helps.
There are a lot of things in life that we really take for granted, and sometimes the scariest things in the world are the things that you can't see. So today we're asking for you to help us shed a little light on a rare and scary disease. Please share this video with your friends, your family, strangers, anybody that you come across. Education is a big thing. It makes a big difference. And another way to make a really huge difference in someone's life is to go check out the United Pompe Foundation. Their website is in this video description. Click on it, check it out, and go ahead and donate some money if you're able to. Again, this is an organization giving real help to real people who are amazing and need it, like my mom. I love her, and thank you so much for helping us out. Thank you so much.
In order to fully understand a culture, you've got to understand and know the language. In order to know and become fluent in a language, you've got to immerse yourself and know the culture. And once you put those things together, it opens the door to relationships.
It was a blast to work with Truett. He's really taken advantage of a lot of things on campus. He's thrown himself into his studies in linguistics. He's been involved with the chapel band every year that he's been a student here. And the Elijah Project gave Truett a great opportunity to grow in his own self-knowledge.
The Elijah Project is made up of kind of 3 portions. You have a class, an internship, and then a community intentional living.
What we try to do is weave those contexts together in one sustained conversation about big questions. What does it mean to be human? What does human responsibility mean? What do we mean when we talk about vocation and calling? For the internships, we try to place students in opportunities where they have a chance to learn more about themselves and more about a field of work that they're really interested in.
The internship, I worked in Australia studying an Aboriginal language and working on revitalizing and documenting it. I've developed an appreciation for the defining aspect of language and how it really defines a culture. It really helped solidify my identity as a person and just really trusting in God's provision.
You know, the deepest transformations in a human life are very time intensive. They require attention and space for a student to engage the questions that matter, and it often involves a relationship with a faculty or a mentor who can walk alongside them, investing time and attention.
For me, I've been blessed by the relationship that faculty and students have here on campus. Dr. Carmer models so well what it means to be hospitable and compassionate and humble, how much care he has for other people, the compassion and kindness that he shows them, even if he disagrees with them.
There's a lot of different ways we can spend our time and attention. We can invest our talents. A lot of things we can trade our lives for. Our students have opportunities and choices all over the place. We want to help them discern wisely about how to invest their talents in a way that's going to most align with what God's doing in the world and who He's made them to be.
Being here at Gordon has really prepared me for the future to interact with people different from myself, as well as different cultures and different languages. I'm glad I went to Gordon. I'm glad that I'm going to be graduating from here. The unique opportunities I was able to have has formed and shaped and challenged and encouraged me in who I am. I wouldn't have found that anywhere else.
CentralValleyTalk.com